I'm Sophie Mayhew, and this is Small Town or Big City. Is urban life better than rural living? Before the Second World War, the majority of Americans lived in rural areas, and the U.S. was considered an agrarian nation because most of the family's incomes came from their agriculture. However, as time has gone on over the past 100 years or so, the USDA reports that the total population living on farms in rural areas has significantly declined. This decline is most likely due to the process known as urbanization. According to National Geographic, urbanization is the process through which cities grow and a higher and higher percentage of the population comes to live in the city. The experts at the United Nations report that by 2050, they expect about 68% of the world population to be living in an urban area. This is a steep increase from the 1950 percentage of 30%, meaning that more and more people choose to move to the city each year. That raises the question, with all of this change of people moving from rural to urban areas, is this change for the better? But in order to determine what makes a place better, we must first look at it through different lenses. The first of which is health. Where are people physically and mentally healthier? Second is safety. Where are people the most safe? Lastly is opportunity. Where are people more likely to get an education, job, or house? Again, we'll start with health. The University of Wisconsin reports that on average, people in metropolitan areas live about 2 years longer than their rural counterparts. This is likely due in part to exercise. This chart shows that people in cities, on average, exercise about 10% more than people in rural areas. This is likely due to the fact that people in cities have a greater access to public transit, sidewalks, and live in closer proximity to their daily destinations, which means that American city dwellers walk more than rural Americans. Another factor to consider is food insecurity. The Rural Sociological Society's Rural Report defines food deserts as part of the food insecurity problem. Food deserts are counties in which all residents must drive more than 10 miles to the nearest supermarket chain or supercenter. As shown by this chart, food deserts are more common in rural areas than non-rural areas. Food deserts have a big problem because when people live in them, they are less likely to reach their daily food consumption needs. For example, they're less likely to get their average vegetable, protein, and dairy consumption needs, meaning that they're most likely more overweight and have more health conditions than people that don't live in food deserts. Another part to examine is mental health. According to the Arkin Mental Health Institute, city dwellers are more likely to have mood disorders and anxiety disorders. However, people in urban areas are also half as likely to commit suicide, meaning that depending on your mental health condition, the city or rural areas kind of depend on what's happening. The next lens to look through is safety. Many people believe that violent crime in America is increasing. However, it's not. According to the FBI, violent crime has actually been on the decline for the past 3 or 4 years. However, this is not because violent crime has declined in the cities. In fact, if you live in an urban area, you're about 40% more likely to be raped, robbed, or assaulted than people that live in rural areas. Another factor to consider when it comes to safety is car accidents. Urban areas account for about half of all car accidents, which seems like a lot until you consider the fact that rural areas are actually home to less than half the population, meaning that rural areas, you're more likely to be in a car accident than urban areas. The last lens we'll look at is opportunity. Job growth in America has been a big topic of conversation. However, there's been more job growth in metro areas than non-metro areas, meaning that you're more likely to get a job in a city and have that job be higher paying than if you lived in a rural area. Similarly, you're more likely to have a higher degree of education in an urban area than a rural area. Last thing to look at is homeownership. Contrary to most beliefs, you're actually more likely to own a home in a rural area than an urban area. This is likely due to the fact that people in urban areas often live in rented apartments or shared style homes. When looking at the conclusion, we'll take into account all three of the lenses we looked at. The first of which is health. You're more likely to have a higher physical health in the city, while your mental health kind of depends on what condition you've been diagnosed with. When it comes to safety, you're more likely to be a victim of violent crime in a city, but less likely to be in an accident there. When it comes to opportunity, you'll have a higher chance of getting a job or a higher level of education in the city, but you're more likely to own your own home sooner in rural areas. Overall, whether or not a city or rural area is the best place kind of depends on what you're looking for and who you are as a person. There is no right or wrong answers since both the rural and city areas are kind of tied when it comes to health, safety, and opportunity.